back with more Avatar: The Last Airbender. This is episode 11 of season 1. Very excited to see what's going to be happening next as we get into the second half of this first season, or book, I suppose I should say. Yeah, last episode I really enjoyed. It seems to be a bit kind of divisive among people in the comments, which is kind of fair enough. You know, surrounding Jet and all that jazz going on with him. Quite a bit to unpack with him. Kind of messed up guy, sadly. But yeah, we've dealt with him. Potentially forever, potentially not. We'll see if that ever comes back up. But I also really enjoyed the focus on Sokka, and he's quickly becoming my favourite character. So I'm intrigued to see what's going to be happening next with the story. You know, is this going to be an episode mainly focused on an individual? Is it going to be more so focused on just like a big group? When are we getting our Momo-centric episode? That's what I'm asking. And yeah, as we get into this one, I'm intrigued. Because a few comments I've gotten in the last week or so since I posted the last reaction, both on Patreon and YouTube, seems to be quite the reputation surrounding this one. For the wrong reasons, it would seem. Apparently this isn't a particularly well-liked episode, perhaps, so I'm intrigued to see what I'm going to think of it, that's for sure. And yeah, it's called The Great Divide, which seems kind of ironic since it seemed to have divided the fan base, so let's see what happens and get into the next one.
But what if it does rain?
What if it doesn't? Then I would have put the tarp up for nothing.
You're infuriating! What happened to the tent?
Why don't you ask Miss Know-It-All, Queen of the Twigs?
Oh, siblings.
Well, you're Mr. Lazy Bum. Harsh words won't solve problems. Action will. Why don't you just switch jobs?
Very wise.
Whatever. You see that? Settling feuds and making peace. All in a day's work for the Avatar.
Yeah, he's bringing balance.
Hey, if you're looking for the camping guide, I was here first.
Is that your tribe?
It most certainly is not.
Uh-oh.
That's the Zhang tribe, a bunch of low-life thieves.
I like the different musical cues for the tribes.
Sick people get priority over old people.
Maybe you Zhangs wouldn't have so many sick people if you weren't such slobs.
If you Ganjins weren't so clean, maybe you wouldn't live to be so old.
I could smell your
Well,
stink a mile
ready to
away.
put your peacemaking skills to the test?
Yeah, good luck.
We'd rather be taken by the Fire Nation than travel with those stinking thieves.
Oh wow,
Travel with you
that seems like an exaggeration.
Making peace between people is his job.
His job's gonna make us cross this whole thing on foot, isn't it?
Okay, now comes
You were
the
all
man.
for hiking in the last one.
No food allowed in the canyon.
Suppose you learned his lesson about that.
Would you rather be hungry or dead? Now we're heading down in 10
Probably
minutes.
dead.
Guess the spirits are still angry. Hope you all brought sacrifices.
Oh, we should have brought the elderly.
We'll be safe now.
Ah! No, 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 no. What the hell?
What was that?
Canyon crawler. Oh, and there's sure to be more.
Your arms.
Excellent.
They're broken.
Oh, Jesus.
My arms, I got no bending. In other words,
We're trapped in this canyon.
Time to learn some earthbending, Aang.
I'm not walking another step with the likes of them.
Can't he use his whistle to summon Nappa? Maybe help out that way?
Ideas?
no bending.
Unjustly blame the Zhangs like you always do.
Gladly.
Let's calm down, Saruman.
Ganjin's on this side and Zhang's on that side. We'll travel in 2 separate lines.
Oh. Battle Royale!
You guys aren't gonna put up your tarps? What for? It's the dry season. Exactly. Besides,
It's like the reason they hate each other going to be from something like really petty that could have been so easily resolved, but it's just like they've had grudges for all these years. You did sneak food in. When did Saruman the Wise abandon reason for madness?
I bet you would enjoy hearing some history.
Are they going to be like 2 completely different stories?
That coward Wei Jin knocked Jinwei to the ground and stole our sacred orb. You can never trust a Zhang.
Oh, come on.
care for some
You're not learning these lessons from like the old guy in the last episode?
Must be thinking.
You know one does not represent all.
They probably assumed we brought food in and decided to bring food in themselves. That's why we brought food in.
Jesus Christ. We're all as bad as each other.
Back over 100 years.
Abandon them all. I like how the art styles are really different because they're like so different sides and stories.
Help him. Instead of thanking him for his kind and selfless deed, they sentenced him to 20 long years in prison.
Oh.
We Zhangs will never forget that injustice.
Lonely, isn't it? Being impartial.
I wish I could help these people get along.
Thank God there are like two separate things for them to go down and something in the middle that Aang could stay on.
He was returning into their village gate and was wrongfully punished by the Ganjin.
Not punished enough, if you ask me. Okay, I get it. I only need your help.
Maybe the Zhang can climb the wall with their long, disgusting fingernails.
Oh my God.
Oh, sorry. Perhaps the Avatar is right.
Yes, perhaps he is.
Harsh words will never solve our problems.
Action will.
I hope you all kill each other, quite frankly.
Is that food? Everyone smuggled food down here? Unbelievable! You guys put our lives in danger because you couldn't go without a snack for a day? You're all awful!
Yes. And please. Oh God. See what you've done.
I don't care about this stupid feud. I just want us to get out of here alive.
Could have fooled me.
I only took their side because they fed me.
Okay, I guess that's fair. Depends what they fed you. If it's like, oh, do you want some olives, Liam? I'd have turned them all over to these creatures. I thought he cut them all in half then. I was like, Jesus. Oh. Stopping them from eating. I mean, hopefully they can get out of those things eventually, though, because otherwise they're just going to starve to death. And that's not exactly a humane thing.
Now follow me!
Yeah, there you go. Enjoy.
Jin Wei? Wei Jin? I know those guys!
Yes, we're all aware of the story.
No!
He genuinely
I
knew him?
really knew them. I might not look it, but I'm 112 years old. I was there 100 years ago on the day you're talking about. They were brothers. Twins, in fact. And they were 8. And most importantly, they were just playing a game.
Oh.
The sacred orb from the legend? That was the ball. Wei Jin was kind of a slob, and Jin Wei was a little stuffy. That much is true. But they respected each other's differences enough to share the same playing field.
Because they were
It's
siblings.
time we forget the past.
And look to the future.
Was he just making all that up? Just to shut him up. I wouldn't blame him. Hello!
I'm sick of this place.
Fair.
I made the whole thing up.
There we go.
You did not.
That is so wrong.
Now where's that custard tart?
It would have been a hell of a coincidence. I like that we still don't exactly know like the real story, but we can assume neither of them are actually true. Okay, yeah, that was a good episode. I did enjoy it. I can see why people may not have. I can see why maybe this wasn't, you know, in terms of like what we've seen so far, it definitely wasn't one of the strongest ones, just because it wasn't like very narratively driven about like the main conflict, I guess, and the main stuff we were caring about. I do find it kind of interesting that, you know, the ones I haven't been quite so keen on so far have more so like not had like Zuko and stuff around to kind of drive things forward. But you know, it wasn't bad by any means. It just felt a bit like, yeah, it's just there. It doesn't really advance much outside of like testing Aang's skills of bringing people together. But he also doesn't need those skills yet because he's not, you know, fully embraced all the powers and stuff yet. So he's still kind of on that journey. But yeah, I kind of like the idea of what they're going for with these tales, you know, told through generations and getting completely messed up, and that's caused all these conflicts. And it's probably just some trivial, stupid thing that's just really been mistranslated or mistold, misrepresented, and that's kind of caused this huge rivalry and divide. And I like how they were kind of showcasing that a bit at the start with Sokka and Katara being on different sides about, you know, how to do each other's jobs. And Aang was like, "Oh, just swap jobs then." So they're showing that he is capable of it, which I do like. And then those two also then went on to just believe the other sides of the story during the night. And I was kind of like, yeah. I feel like if you'd swapped this episode around with the previous one, I feel like maybe then it would have made a bit more sense if they could have worked around that so the stories worked, you know, with this one coming first. Because it just, like, after the last episode and how the whole message behind it was, you know, not every single member of the Fire Nation is necessarily bad. You know, not everyone is going to represent the part of, you know, the people that they are part of. Everyone's kind of different, and that's kind of what allowed Sokka to save that entire village of people in the last one when Katara kind of fell more under Jet's spell and everything. So they kind of learnt a lesson from that, and then this episode they completely disregard that, and, you know, Sokka and Katara are both like, well, all of them are bad then, aren't they? Just instantly believing what they're saying. I know Sokka's main motivation there was food and stuff, but I'm just like, come on, guys, like, well, at least, like, put a few episodes in between that and this one, so it's like, you know, it wasn't quite so obvious. Like, it literally undoes the lessons you were learning in the last episode, and, you know, it seems like Sokka's attitude had changed. So yeah, that felt kind of bizarre, but I do like that it's showcasing, like, the opening bit, how different Sokka and Katara are, even though they're siblings, and through that, I think Aang's kind of explanation for what actually happened was basically just inspired by those events with Sokka and Katara, because that's kind of all he's really known for a while now. That's kind of his life now. So he kind of took those two, just made them like brothers, and just these arguments being blown out of proportion and causing all these unnecessary feuds. So I think that's kind of what it was inspired by, and why he made up that story at the end. When he was telling it, I was like, this is kind of a ridiculous explanation, but I suppose it can speak to just how crazy that the truth can be, how mad it is when things are blown out of proportion and really change. People may retell these stories to make themselves sound better, and then in time, like, you know, it just becomes a completely different story than what the original actually was, and, you know, the true story gets lost to the years and everything. But then he was just like, no, I lied. Which I guess is some way of him making peace with everyone, and at least they are united as one tribe now. They can see past all that. So in a way, that's a nice solution, but it's a shame that it had to come from Aang just flat out lying to them, as opposed to them just actively finding a better solution. But, you know, if the stories weren't necessarily true, then I guess that makes sense. And the two, like, sides to the story that were being explained to Sokka and Katara as well, I like how those flashbacks kind of had different art styles just because those two tribes are so different and on different sides. You know, how they're all dressed differently, and some of them are like more kind of like a slob, and then some are like a snob. And that rivalry, it did provide some funny moments, but it's all kind of starting from them just trying to get like a tour guide to send them along, and there just so happened to be like two paths with a thing, you know, overlooking them both for Aang to kind of go on to keep the tribes separately eventually. Bit convenient, granted, but yeah, I think the main thing to take from it is that Aang again has the potential to unite people even at a young age, which is what the Avatar kind of ultimately needs to do, and the goal is to bring peace and balance to all the nations. So clearly he's showcasing that he has good instincts when it comes to that. Maybe a bit to learn, maybe a better solution could have been found in him just having to make up a story and lying to them, but also shows his intelligence that he could use the fact that he is actually technically 112 to get away with saying, oh, I knew those two. And yeah, the fact that those two tribes are just so gullible to believe that probably doesn't speak well of them anyway. So it probably, you know, the fact that they could believe such a nonsense garbage story shows that their other stories that they were believing up to now are probably also nonsense and garbage. But, you know, people will believe anything. I think certain events over the past few years can certainly show people can believe stupid stuff and have all these conspiracy theories and everything. So I kind of like what it's speaking to with that. But yeah, maybe if this was like an earlier episode of the show, maybe if this was like one of the first couple, I feel like it maybe would have worked better. But when it's coming just like in like the middle of the action, the middle of the season, we have like this really urgent threat now. We have like a time limit for when Aang needs to get all this stuff done. So to have an episode just like this, and he spends a few days trying to guide people who may not have never really gotten along, seemed an odd diversion at this point in time. So yeah, placement of the season I think should have been changed, and especially coming off the last episode and the lessons that the characters were learning in that one, it feels weird and kind of like a step back for some of the attitudes of Sokka and Katara in this. But it is what it is. But I did enjoy seeing Aang try and find peace between Sokka and Katara, the two tribes, Momo and Appa as well with the fruit or whatever it was. So the idea of like these divisions and being impartial. I think that was probably my favourite line of the episode, was actually Aang talking to the tour guide guy. And he was kind of saying, impartialness is very lonely or something, isn't it? I really liked that line, and it makes a lot of sense. And I think there is kind of a tragedy to that with Aang, because all the airbenders are gone. He lost all his people, so he really is lonely, and made lonelier by being the Avatar and having to be impartial. And he can never really have a side anymore of his own. He can't just decide to be like, oh, well, these guys are going to be who I'm with now. And in a sense, he has a family around him still, but it's probably not the same as having like the people he knew about all the time. It's not like he can just hang with Boomy all along, because he has stuff to do. He has a time limit. So even if he does have people around still that knew him back then, they're not going to be around forever. He's still very young. So there's a lot of tragedy behind that I do appreciate. And I like the idea of these tribes being at war for so long. You almost kind of forget what it was really about, just to be petty, making some insults at each other, twisting what Aang was trying to teach them, and the fact that it was only a lie that ended up bringing them together. So iffy means to a nice end, I guess. But yeah, I did enjoy the tour guide guy as well, and his line about partialness and loneliness and how that relates to Aang. A lot of this did come back to Aang's character so far and what Aang's character is going to need to be in the future. So I liked that side of things. And the creatures were kind of interesting design-wise, kind of looked like anti-things. And Aang's solution to just kind of cover their mouths and ride them. I guess that's one way of taming them. Hopefully they can get those bags off, otherwise they'd starve. I assume, they were quite powerful jaws, so I guess they could get out of those things instead of them all just slowly starving to death because they couldn't eat the food. But the fact that the two tribes had kind of completely disobeyed the rules about bringing food with them ended up being both the problem for them, because they drew these creatures out, but also the solution, because it could use them to draw them away as they escaped and everything. I kind of like how that all played out, but a lot of it came down to Aang's intelligence, which was a good thing to highlight in this one, and the tragedy behind how lonely he can be, and always will probably have to be, to embrace being the Avatar. So yeah, I don't think it was bad by any means. I feel like maybe it would be better looked on, and would land better earlier in the season, certainly before the previous episode, because I don't think that did the characters many favours in terms of that. It is a very odd story to kind of have going on, a very non-main story arc focused story to have when there's like a ticking time bomb that we kind of need to address. So that did feel strange, but I didn't mind the episode overall. Definitely not one of my favourite ones, but I had fun with it. It was a good time, and I think that can always be said for Avatar, even if an episode like this isn't, as well loved by the fandom, it would seem. And if an episode like this that I know people aren't really fans of in the fandom is still fairly good and enjoyable to me, I feel like that kind of bodes well for the future of the show. So yeah, I liked a few of the ideas they were playing about with, but I do think it was flawed from kind of going back on some character stuff from the last episode, and just where it placed in the season. I thought it was a bit strange, but still, I liked what they did with Aang more so than anything else. So some positives to take from it regardless. And yeah, overall, pretty solid episode. Not one of my favourites, very oddly placed, but It wasn't that bad, I would say, at least for me. But I can see why people wouldn't be a big of a fan of this one. I think it's easier for me because I'm like watching one a week, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, we'll just see what happens next. If I was binging this and going through it, and I was like really into it, I was like, oh, I just watched 5 episodes in a row, let's watch the next one, let's watch the next one, and then it was this, I felt like that would kind of drag a bit and be like, oh, that was strange. But I don't know, I'm enjoying the slow burn ride of watching this show, so maybe that's kind of why I didn't mind it as much. But who knows, I think maybe rewatching this when I'm all done and rewatching this bit in the season, it is going to really stick out like a sore thumb. But for now, it's an episode, it was there, it was fine. And yeah, that's going to be everything for this reaction, and until the next one, thanks for watching.